Hello, instructor. Hello, professor. This is my week 5 final presentation for the PHP MyAdmin and MySQL database user guide, walkthrough, and database description. So for the first section of this, I'm going to start by basically doing a walkthrough of that user guide that was posted with the screenshot, except this time just in a live walkthrough. Um, so I guess let us begin. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll create a new database here, and we're just going to call this database new online, mostly because I'm not that creative. So we'll call it new online for CPT310. Building ourselves out a new database here, and then we're going to import our SQL queries and tables. So we just hit on the import on the tab. We're going to choose our files. I've got mine sitting in SQL scripts here on my desktop, but where you have them from will be just fine. And we're going to go ahead and start with the Create Database. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we're going to go ahead and hit Go, and it's going to go. It's going to give us this readout that everything was successful and returned. All our tables were created, and it's also going to give us a list of our tables over here on the left under our server. From here, we want to go ahead and import all of our data into it. And so it's going to be our populate data. So we're going to go and open that one. Same thing down in the bottom right hand corner. Go. And we are greeted with a familiar screen with a large number of imports being imported into it. And we can take a look and we can see that not only do we have our imported items in the actual fields themselves, we can also double check and verify that our tracking and triggers took place by going to our employee audit. We can see our employee IDs were added, as well as the additional table and triggers that I added, which was a purchase history, which we'll go over when we start going over the actual SQL. I originally really struggled with the triggers and getting them to go. I came in with a lot of errors, a lot of problems on it, and so I wanted to build an additional table and additional triggers just to get a little bit more practice into it because I had so much problems to begin with on it. And that's it. Our databases are set up and our everything is set up. So from here, let's go over the code that I made, or the queries that I made a little bit. And we'll just start at the top here under the Create Database SQL. I like Notepad++. That's what I have it in, mostly because the colors allow me an easy way to see everything. So for the most part, we're just creating a table. We've got our tables created here, whether they are, integers, because all of our IDs are going to be integers, or they are names using varied characters, or for anything that's a cost, we did a double, which is just basically a max of 2 past the digit, and then a max of 3 before. So just to keep it forced into the correct procedure and the correct amount, we did that. We made our employees, our drink menu, our onshore menu, our payment type, our personal info. This is one of the ones that I made that was new, and that's the table employee audit. I called it ID and then audit data. That one, pardon me, that one's not the new one. That's the one I had before. The one that I made as new is right here is the create table purchase history. I called it purchased ID. And I call it purchase data. The things that are different about these ones is the primary key has an auto increment on it, meaning the ID itself will automatically increment and does not have to be given into it to automatically tick up. And I ended up having to deal and struggle with that a lot and getting that to function and work, but I did eventually get it to function and work, which I'll show you in just a little bit here. From there, we get the user account, finish order, and so we have all of our tables created. And then from there, we do 3 different triggers. So the first trigger is for the before insert on the finish order. This is the one that I made just to practice doing my triggers and things like that, especially on the before insert on, because I kept getting a specific error, which is you cannot add ID with user number 0. That is a duplicate. And so debugging that one and trying to dig into that one and looking online for that one. So what I did is anytime that a row is inserted into the finish order, it's going to make a new row in table purchase history. Specifically, though, it is going to insert on table purchase history just purchase data. We're not inserting a new ID number. And that's where my errors continually generated, I found, is I had it set here as ID comma purchase data. And what was happening is it was trying to place a new ID value manually instead of just letting it auto increment on itself. So that was an interesting error that I came into that I had to get around from here. From there, it's just going to add the values, customer with ID number. It's going to find the customer ID number, made a purchase, and then date with a format. So it's basically just saying this specific customer with the purchase ID number made a purchase when the purchase was made. Same thing with employee add, it's going to tell you when employee was added. Same thing with employee delete, it's going to tell you when employee was deleted. We have 3 alter tables here. We're altering our table finish order, user account, and finish order to add a foreign key into it, and that's basically to give it a connection with an additional table for the foreign key. I originally had these foreign keys and everything built into the tables themselves, and what I came across is I was continually running into errors where I couldn't get the ordering right, and it was referencing a table that hadn't been created yet and moved around, and so I just pushed those all to the alter table afterwards. And speaking of the foreign keys, I do in fact have a visual aid as far as those foreign keys go. So the finish order payment ID is associated with the primary key of the payment type on the payment ID, and this is just kind of like a pseudo Venn diagram I built up, mostly for my own to keep it wrapped around and for management. For the user account, personal ID is tied to personal info personal ID, same as finish order. So both of them reference the same personal ID. This one's a foreign key, this one's a foreign key. This one is the this one right there is the primary key. So foreign, primary. Foreign, primary. So that's just a way to keep it the information kind of ordered and everything like that. So that way, it's you can't just start deleting personal info tables and personal ID tables or deleting people out of there because they have orders that they have placed and things like that. As far as the data that we populated, it was pretty much just some simple data. We populated into the drink menu, we populated into employees, into the menus, the payment types, personal info, user account, and then I did populate as well into a finish order, and that is to replicate a finished order from a specific user ID that was listed. So this is to be the order ID, this would be the user ID, and that'll reference, what specific user, and so all of that can be pulled up. From there, it'll punch in the date, time, all the way down, and then what would they use to pay? It was a credit card or whatnot. So, and we can confirm all those triggers and everything took place in the SQL itself by going to our purchase history right here, customer ID with number, made a purchase on when, customer ID, employee with ID blank was added, employee was added, employee was added, employee was added. And so that, for the most part, is the databases that were created, the triggers associated with them, the links, connections between them, as well as to start from scratch in PHP assuming you have the connections and everything like that to get going. On a note with that, in this particular example, I used XAMPP with Apache MySQL FileZilla. Just Apache MySQL is pretty much what I have with PHP running inside of that one. And that is pretty much it for both the user guide and the explanation and as far as management goes. So I thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.